Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Episode number 70 of Inside the Game. And I am Jonathan Turner. This is Nathan Wangler. And yes, I'm coming into a little later today. A little later. Not as energetic. Might be missing the energy this morning. Slightly. Slightly. But the
Yep.
show must go on.
Yep.
And therefore, I am on. Alongside Nathan Wangler, Inside the Game number 70. And we're excited to have you on the National Soccer Network on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And yes, I missed the episode yesterday. I was lying at home in bed for the entire day. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And I have a purple too, which has like the reclining, so the feet go up, the bed, I can't sleep that way, but I can rest that way. And I did rest that way yesterday. But yeah, and my voice is a little wacky today, but I do have my coffee. Shout out to the coffee firm. And but yeah, but Nathan, man, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. There's a good conversation with John Natale yesterday. I know that's kind of become his thing, stopping by on Tuesdays. So that was a great talk about everything public address announcing, everything what's coming up in his life, a little bit of U.S. Open Cup there at the end. But yeah, especially as someone that's worked, in baseball for a few years, I know this. I, I really do. Once you get through a stretch of time where you feel like are working all day every day and you're just exerting yourself 24/7, I feel like your body eventually just kind of like catches up to you, and like it almost like forces you to shut it down for a day. So that's why I was saying before we came on the show, like you probably needed that sleep for a while, but your body was eventually just like, hey, like it's got to happen now, it can't happen later, sorry, boom, hit the off switch, go lay down, go go watch some TV or do whatever you do. But no, I've been through that experience before. But yeah, great conversation yesterday. So all's been good on my end. Baseball teams dominating, man. So that makes for a fun summer. They've been doing really well. They're on the road in Dayton, so I might be doing one of those games remotely here, and then they're on the road in Wisconsin. So it's a little 12-game road stretch. So it'd be nice for me to kind of really dive into all this stuff. But no, the talk yesterday with John Natale was great, but it's didn't feel the same not having two Johns around. Normally I got two Johns, I only had one, so that left me waning.
Well, I promise to try not to pass this on to you. I still do have a fever this morning. I think it's
Okay.
breaking though because I did take my. This segment brought to you by Advil.
Yeah, power of meds.
80 liquid filled capsules, only $3,979 at your local Walmart. But but excuse
Your
me.
time.
I know, but so it is. I think it is breaking, which is good. But I will hopefully
Good.
not pass this through the mic in the wave channels and back to you. But
Okay.
I can thank my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter. She was not feeling well last weekend, and she asked to drink out of my water bottle. And I was like, I at the time she wasn't. She just started hacking it up like maybe a couple minutes after that. I'm like, oh, dude, that's why I refuse. I tell my wife like I refuse to want to share my drinks with anybody
Yes.
because of this stuff, right? And it's
Yeah.
not because I don't want to be like this person. Like we'll be like walking down the road, like we're like at a park, and I brought my big water bottle, and the kids don't bring their water bottle, and they're like, "Dad, can I have water?" I'm like, "No, just go get a drinking fountain." They're like, well, you have water? I go, "Yes, I do. I brought water for myself. It's true. I prepared."
Drinking
So then
fountains
I'm
are
taking
scary
the
though.
lid off, and I'm trying to pour it in their mouth. It just I don't like
Drinking
it.
fountains are scary though, man. I mean,
I don't. I just don't like sharing my water bottle
it's fair. We're at
for
the
this
ballpark
exact
though.
reason.
We're at the ballpark though, and I watch this kid walk up to the drinking fountain. I don't know if you had this when you were younger. I mean, in school, I certainly did. But you ever see the kids who like go to drink out of the drinking fountain and start actually making out with the drinking fountain? I was standing behind this kid. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I'll go get a bottle of water. We're fine. You do your thing. The drinking fountain's like green and stuff, so I don't know why you put your mouth on that, but you have fun with whatever's coming your way. So, so those can
um,
be freaky sometimes.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. So it's episode number 70. It's hard to believe that we've done 70 of these bad boys, right? It's hard to believe.
In the name
And
of Zelda's flute, make the call to the bullpen, JT. Do it.
in the name of Zelda's flute.
He's actually going. He's just going 3 innings today, John. So you gotta come in after.
Yeah,
He's got a pitch limit today.
it's definitely. I'm going 3 innings. Yeah, I mean, couple things. One is it's episode number 70. Like I said, it's hard to believe that we've done 70 of these, and it's even harder to fathom that we're that closer to 100. And obviously, at 100, we'll do something. I just think that every week, 10 days, we do something special. It would just be kind of, I think it would lose its value. But we'll do something special at 100 for sure. I haven't marked out what day that's going to actually occur yet, but we will do something special for 100. And I was informed by the coffee firm on Sunday that there's a package that's going to be delivered here to the studio today. I'm not sure what's in that package, but hopefully it's delivered here today, and I'll open it on the air tomorrow. So if it's here, I will wait to open it and do it on the air tomorrow, which I think is the respectful thing to do. Even though it's so hard for me to want to not open something up when I see it. So I may very well open it up and then reclose it really very quickly. I don't know, but.
Just to see it, preview it, yeah.
Well, yeah, because what if it's like a powder or something? I mean, what if it's like they sent me anthrax?
Yeah, I mean, that would be bad. Yeah, he sent you ricin.
This guy John, he anyway,
take over our space, man. We got to handle this.
Yeah, no. Well, hey, I mean, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I've been paying a lot of attention to the Landon Donovan and Tim Howard podcast. I think it's one of the more raw and in your face and real conversations about the U.S. men's national team. I do. And recently they had Bruce Arena on. And Bruce Arena, the former men's national team coach, did so for many, many years, LA Galaxy head coach. And he's had a lot of success both at the domestic and international levels for U.S. men's. And he made a point, and it's a point that I made. So I want to say that it was my point first. But all it does is just solidify that I was correct. And Bruce Arena, in his point on this show, stated that every other country in the world hires a domestic coach for their men's team. Right? Every other one. And now he kind of attacked it the same way that I did. With that, he was fairly certain that coaches around the world were all domestic, and that. But we had done some research live on the air and found out that there's no coach in the history of the World Cup that was not domestic had ever won the World Cup. And it leads us back to this question. Man, my voice is all crazy today. But it leads us back to this question: are we going to wake up and smell the roses? Are we going to wake up and acknowledge the fact that what we're doing is wrong? And that what we're doing isn't going to lead us to the promised land. And that all that we're doing is window dressing. That is all we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We are just dressing the window. We are kind of like basically just putting exclamation points on words.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pochettino's a very good coach. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that he's a great coach. He's not our coach. He is not our coach. He doesn't know our culture. He doesn't know how our players work. He doesn't know the domestic game to the point that he went to what he needs to in order to understand how to coach his team.
Right.
And we will never win a World Cup with Pochettino.
Mm-hmm.
And window dressing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can look at resumes if you want. And no one is saying that Mauricio Pochettino doesn't have a good resume. Like, no one is saying that he hasn't coached on some really good clubs. He hasn't been with some really good teams. But the part that I want to circle back on, and it's the part that you were making, and there is one of those things that you listed, was familiarity with not just the culture, but also with how things go in the United States and player development systems. That's the most important thing in my mind. His understanding of how the game of soccer works in the U.S. and what players have to go through in order to get into the spot that they're in, and integrating young players, and what that entire thing looks like, from their journey, from where they, start all the way up to the top. If you're not fully ingrained into that process, you're not exactly sure what you're dealing with in the field, or that how these players develop, or how they get to where they're going. You grew up in a completely different, not only soccer world, but a completely different soccer structure. I mean, you came from a completely different system and way of doing things to a new system, a new country, a new culture, and a new language. This isn't like, someone from the Dodgers organization coming over to the Tigers. This isn't like, someone from, the Lions going to the Bears. Like, those are within leagues where you understand the processes, you understand the procedures, you understand how to draft and develop and do all these other things. It's the same exact league. It would be like going from one major club to the other major club in his professional soccer career. But that's a lot different than, let's say, if Steve Kerr, who's the coach of the U.S. men's national basketball team, if he went from here to going over and coaching in Australia. I mean, it's a completely different world in every way, shape, or form. And that's what we talked about. And I loved that you mentioned, and I thought it was a really good point. The last time that we had talked about this, how there was almost like this, like a touch of arrogance, especially when like Bruce Arena was coach the first time around, when Bruce Arena was coaching. You're right, because we didn't have as much, I guess, exposure to what was happening overseas. We did. We knew what was going on over there. We had an understanding that obviously they're much further along than we are, and we've known that for forever. But there was almost kind of like this dumb arrogance, and like, it's kind of like when the Tigers made their deep run last year. It was like one of the announcers said, like, it's almost as if they don't understand that they should not be here. And that's what those early 2000s U.S. men's national teams were like. It was like we were so young and energetic and getting after it and just playing straight on and being aggressive and having fun, that it was almost like we just kind of looked around and we're like, we really shouldn't be here right now, but this is how we play the game. And we leaned into that, and that's what got us there. And now we put someone like Mauricio Pochettino in, who's from a completely different soccer school, from a completely different part of the world, who's trying to implement a way of playing that, again, just doesn't represent or really resonate with the American players. And that's why I think we're seeing the results that we're seeing. Yeah, it might be a product of culture and pride and all these other things. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, in every sport you look at, all of them are becoming more technically sound and less based on aggression and being forward. I mean, all of them are. But I think when we look at the U.S. men's national team, like we said, like it's a group of individually skilled players. Even if you put them in the room together, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go out and produce, because you have to have that other angle of it too. But how do you get there? How do you get there with someone who's not an American and doesn't really understand what it takes to get through to a group of American players? And again, this isn't me talking down on diversity. Like, I don't want anyone to watch this episode and be like, oh, Nate and JT, are thinking Americans only to coach American. No, that's not what we're saying. But someone who would be able to relate to these players, at least on a deeper level, to get the most out of them. Yeah, I completely think that's important, because it's much more than just coaching the game. Coaching the game is one thing. Understanding all the other things that go into it, I don't know if he's quite caught up on that. And people might be saying, well, we're not going to win a World Cup anyways, but I think we could put ourselves in a better spot if we had someone who was maybe a little more understanding in that position. I think the only option for the U.S. men's national team, to be honest with you, JT, they have to win the World Cup, or the World Cup, the Gold Cup. If they want to give us any sort of confidence going into the World Cup, they have to figure it out. So I agree.
So, I think that what we are saying is, we can American, not American, whatever. The reality is that the coach has to be domestic based and have been here for a long period of time to understand how this game of soccer is played in this country. Now, does that mean that coach could be a head coach of a college? Sure, maybe they are a head coach in a youth club and have gone through all the licensing. The reality is, for me, is that the coach at this level, sole focus should be to coach the team, and then you have a general manager or a sporting director, and their job is to cultivate the talent and give you a hotbed of players who you can select from as a coach, right? That's ultimately the job, right? And this is where Herb Brooks back in the 1980s, 1979, 1980s, when this whole thing took place, is he took that away from the table of the board, so to speak, of U.S. hockey, right? Because they were the ones that wanted to select the team, and he said, "No, I'm going to select it. I got this."
Mm-hmm.
Back then, it made sense. Back then, you didn't have this hotbed of information that you do now. And back then, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have all these things. And to be fair, the system was broken, and he was trying to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
While our system is broken in a lot of ways, we can all agree that there's a lot of talent out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talented players.
Mm-hmm.
The general manager's job in any role as a general manager is to manage the business side and to help identify players that can come in, the coach can then work with, right? That's what it's designed for.
Mm-hmm.
This is really, really where Bill Belichick went wrong. He became that, right? The second he stopped just being a coach is the second that this is where he lost it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have that general manager. I'm tired of coaches who want to be both. Now, yes, if you're now they've just recently instilled general manager roles, right? Andrew Luck's a general manager up at Stanford, right? It's a new role for college, and I get it, right? Now you're dealing with this business side of the things, and you need someone to oversee that. The high school coach is a general manager. They're the president. They're the coach. They're right. They're all of that. And in college, in most colleges, you are all of those things. You are the general manager. You are the head coach. But why would you want that? Why would you want to have that role if you're just telling me I can show up Monday through Friday and just coach my team?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what you'd want at that level? Why would you want that responsibility? It takes you away from the tactics, the technical, the technical side of this. It takes you away from building rapport with your team. Why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you want that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Pochettino is both right now for the U.S. men's national team. He's a coach and he's a general manager. Used to be Brian McBride. It was Ernie Stewart once upon a time. It was, it's a role that is extremely important. If I'm in U.S. soccer, I'm hiring 40 more scouts, 50 more scouts, right? That's the first thing I'm doing if I'm in U.S. soccer. I'm hiring more scouts.
Yeah.
The next thing is I'm selecting a general manager. A general manager that's sole focus is to handle the business side of this organization and to help cultivate talent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to
Mm-hmm.
be fair, I would be holding more U.S. camps.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a first team camp, a second team camp, a third team camp. I'd be
Mm-hmm.
holding multiple camps. And there are different times. And if you are a player that's on a bubble, maybe you'll find yourself to a second team camp, third team camp. But start creating competition within the camps.
Mm-hmm.
Have different camps. Have them all over the country. Have U.S. men's soccer team ID camps. Like, I don't understand why this is not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you now, there's probably for every player out there that is well known by U.S. soccer, there's a player that's not. So why aren't we holding more camps like that?
Mm-hmm.
Why not hold like legitimate just U.S. men's national team ID camps? Right? You're
Yeah.
telling me there's players aren't going to come to that thing?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be anywhere from 18 to 35.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a 33-year-old out there that could do something for us. On the tail end of their career, still have it, just enough. Get that player out there for 30 minutes in a game, and they'll give it everything they have. What are we afraid of?
Right. Yeah, but I think the focus is with having a younger group is that they can all play together for a stretch of time, and you can really build that unit from the bottom up. But I do agree. I agree with everything that you're saying. And here's my issue. And I know that when they were making their decision on who to bring in for, to coach this U.S. men's national team, obviously player development is the focus. It always is the focus in the United States because you're not necessarily going to have the most talented and the players in the world available to you. Yeah, they still have to develop across the world, obviously. I mean, you're not born into this position. but like the different schools and the different ways of thinking, that means different ways of developing people in different parts of the world. And so that's what that brings. And Mauricio Pochettino, to his credit, does have a good history of developing young players, and that's something that I guess made him attractive to the United States when they brought him in. But again, the question to your point is, well, how is he doing that? How is he going about developing? Again, it is one thing to develop within a system in a professional league where you have, again, players from all over and all you're doing is developing within that system. But when you're overseeing the United States men's national team, that's the United States, where you're not right. You're not just, developing players who are playing at Tottenham. You're not just developing players for this one team or this one club. You're developing players to play for the national team, which means you have to have a good pulse on where the best soccer is, where the hotbeds are, where the scouts should be going. To your point about hiring more people for talent ID and development and going into these places and finding these players. I mean, I'm assuming he's going off of information that is provided to him on players. My understanding is he doesn't understand completely who's who and who's where, and he needs a lot of this shown to him because, again, he's not from here. So that's still a development in trying to figure out who he has and who he wants. And the tough thing is we're trying to figure out all of this 1 year separated from the biggest competition in the world, which is the World Cup. And to me, why the thought of not getting someone, that was already familiar with all that is kind of beyond me. That's the point that is really, really kind of confusing. And so that's, when we talk about that, yeah, I mean, player development needs to be better. Player recognition needs to be better. And I'm sure there could be a lot of changes that are made, but as someone who's really respected, you could say he's a good manager. You could say, the X's and O's he knows, but that's the other hard thing is like when you don't have someone who has a really good understanding of that and the person who really has the final say at the end of the day, how are they able to make that final call confidently if they have people from all different walks who are probably telling them different things about these guys? I mean, that's and also it's dealing with American personalities too, and I think that's hard. I think some of our most talented players also tend to be some of our biggest head cases, and I don't know if Mauricio Pochettino has figured out a way to crack that code. I think about Gio Reyna all the time. I really do. I mean, in what the promise that he showed and then how little he's delivered, especially on the international level, is just really kind of fascinating to see. Greg Berhalter obviously didn't get much out of him, and now it seems like Mauricio Pochettino in those 2 games against Canada and Panama also couldn't really figure him out. So that's the part, right? That's the part that's scary is like, yeah, you're good at player development, but can you develop players in a place that's brand new to you to where and also can you match the style of play? And that's the other like aspect of this. They talk about how his style of play is based on attacking. His style of play is being forward and aggressive and going after teams. I didn't see any of that in the Nations League final. I didn't see any of that in Panama. I didn't see any of that against Canada. So I don't know when that part is going to show up. Maybe someone else has a better understanding of what that's going to look like in the future, but that certainly didn't seem like the case. And if it was, they didn't execute on it. So I'm not going to say they don't have a good group, and I'm sure he's good at the X's and O's, but if he wants to instill any confidence, I mean, you got to find your group. I think, and there's really only one player, like I said, the last time we talked about this group that I think stands out to me as someone that is a surefire. You can't let him go. He has to be out there, and it's Diego Luna. So Diego Luna and Christian Pulisic really are my 2 right now that are kind of the front runners, but it is very, very confusing. And it's hard to understand why they played so bad against Panama and Canada. So Canada, that is. So just trying to find answers.
So, yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that the dynamic of a U.S. player is obviously vastly different than that of other players around the world. Michael Lathrop actually chiming in at this point. Can he motivate and get players to buy into his concepts and vision? At this point, it shouldn't be that way. And what I mean by that is that the identity of the players is the identity of the federation, right? That's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to grab players who can identify with the federation, U.S. Soccer, right? And with that mindset, and we don't know what we are right now. That in itself is the problem, right? As the head coach at Birmingham Groves High School, I had to understand the dynamic of the school, dynamic of the environment in which these kids played in, and then I had to find a way to kind of um, adjust my way of thinking to the school in which I was coaching at. Now I can bring in a lot of different ideas and things like that to help improve the environment. But at the end of the day, long after I leave, the school will still be there, right? And a new coach will come in, and they're going to try the exact same thing. The coaches that come in that try to change an entire environment to their ideals do not last.
Mm.
They don't work.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stay because you're fighting. You're going against the grain.
Yep.
U.S. Soccer has been around for a very long time. And so what you're doing is you're taking your ideas, you're taking your vision, and you're trying to align it so that it fits into the overall ideology of U.S. Soccer. And Pochettino will not do that.
Right.
He will not be successful long term
right.
in this environment. I'm telling you that right now. It will not work out. He will not be successful. And if I am wrong, I'll be the first one to tell you live on this show that I am wrong. Here's another comment coming in. Shouldn't be, but U.S. men's national team is one of the most time making significant changes. Shouldn't be, but
out of time.
Oh yeah,
and that's what I said. And that was something that it's interesting. You mentioned that, Michael. Thanks for chiming in. We're talking about the Landon Donovan, Tim Howard podcast, and that's actually one of the things that they talked about. Like there is no time anymore. You wanted time to figure this out. You wanted time to have these conversations. Well, the time's passed. We're already through the Nations League. Yeah, we're going to have friendlies. That's fine. I don't know if that's going to do much in the way of actually preparing us because, again, they're friendlies. The only competitive soccer we have left, right, between when we're talking right now to when the World Cup starts in the United States here is the Gold Cup. That's it. That is the last competitive tournament before we hit the big one. And so in that last competitive tournament, that's why I'm saying, like, anything short of, and this might sound ridiculous, but this was something that was echoed on their podcast, and I think it's true. Anything short of going out and winning the Gold Cup, or at the very least making the Gold Cup final, is not going to do much in the way of convincing American fans that this team is even remotely ready to go out and compete in the World Cup. They're not. And the reason being is because we have to see exactly what you're saying, Michael, and exactly what you're saying, JT. We have to see if they have not only bought into what he's saying, but if he has the right group of guys. Because whatever the grouping was that he had the last time out in those two games against Panama and against Canada was certainly not the right group. Either that, or you could probably say that they just weren't all that invested in winning the CONCACAF Nations League final. There's not a whole lot of time. The Gold Cup is it. And so that is the proving ground. If you want to show people,
if that is the mindset of this team, we're fucked.
No.
If that's the mindset, like, and I'm not saying that it's coming from you, but if we're like, we don't give a crap about this one, we're just, whatever, then we're screwed.
Yeah.
You can't come at it. The United States does not have the luxury of taking things for granted.
Mm-mm.
We don't have that luxury.
Mm-mm.
The luxury we have is that we get to play. And every night you go out is your opportunity to prove that you deserve to be there. Right? And that goes for the players, that goes for the team, that goes for the federation, it goes for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And our players don't seem, from their body language, there's a few players that we know give a shit because you can tell by how they play.
Yep.
But for the most part, I don't get the impression that these players care. And again, that herein lies the problem.
Yep.
And herein lies the problem. And that's why we have to change everything about this. Now, does that mean that the likes of Christian Pulisic will not be around here? No, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that you have to get rid of the players, but you have to give them different things to incentivize them. You know, you have to incentivize them. And I don't know what that looks like at this level. When you're already getting paid millions of dollars to play soccer. Maybe they don't get paid to play at all. Maybe that sounds terrible. You know, because for every player that gets paid, there's
Right.
probably 100 that would do it for free.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I
And
mean? Like, I
yeah.
mean, there's probably 100 players out there. Because think about this, right? Your US, your U15, US youth national team players, they're getting paid. I mean, they're not paying to be there, but they're not getting paid. So, what about them?
Hmm.
You know, yeah, you've earned the right to get paid, but maybe you don't pay them. Maybe they get paid for results. You go win a game, you get paid.
Hmm.
Maybe that sounds terrible. I don't know, but I mean, go get paid for a win.
Hmm. Yeah.
You tell me right now if the sole money was based on winning, yeah, your base salary is whatever a game. Maybe you get paid a lot, but you go out and win, you get 10 times that number. I don't know. There's got to be an incentive. Yeah, you win the World Cup, you get a bonus. But to be fair, I'd rather them get paid for every win. And if they lose a game that they should win, they get paid. They have money taken out of their paycheck.
Hmm.
You lose to Canada, yeah, you're negative 10 grand. We're taking 10 grand back. Thank you.
Hmm.
You're telling me players wouldn't operate differently in that regard? I think they most certainly would. They might say we're not going to come anyways. Well, then that makes you look like a shithead. If you're not going to show up, you know, I think the contract should be renegotiated. I think players should get paid for results, bonuses for wins, and for losses. You go out, you lose to a team like Panama when you're like a favorite by 10 to whatever the number might be. You need to take
Yeah.
money out of their paycheck.
Right.
They don't get their game check that day.
Yeah. But the other side is, are they willing to, are they willing to step aside from club commitments in order to really buy in? Michael chimes in again. 100% incentive based compensation is needed, but the CBA wouldn't allow it. I mean, that's the other side. That's what we're up against, and so we're fighting against the politics of the whole world. And if it's frustrating to me, JT, because I know we come on here and we talk about, we're kind of crafting an ideal world here. We're picturing it in our heads. What would it be like if it was not perfect, but more ideal? What would we have to do in order to, in one way or the other, force these guys to have a sense of
Do you know how
pride?
the collective bargaining agreement goes away? Do you know how it goes away? You don't hire professionals. The ideal world goes, I mean, don't hire professionals. I said this before and I'll say it again. There's
Right.
1,000 players out there that would love to wear a U.S. men's national team jersey and would do so for free. And yeah, they might not be the best players in the world. They might not be the best players that we have to offer, but they'll go out there and they will fight for 90 minutes. And if
Hmm.
we got our asses kicked 9-0, I can at least look at that and go,
So that's something you're willing. So that's something you're willing to live with, even if we go out there and we get rolled on. I'm just asking you that. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but just so that I'm clarifying exactly what the position is here. You would be okay going out and getting rolled on, even if it meant restructuring the whole thing to make it available for people who actually wanted to be there.
100%. At least, again, I don't want to lose 9-0. No one wants
Yeah.
us to lose 9-0. But if
Right.
you're saying I'm losing 4-0 with the current squad, who when they go out there have majority of the possession, moving the ball around, create a ton of chances, but haven't got anything to show for it, or the team out there that will for 90 minutes give it everything that they have and fight like hell and wear it with pride.
Hmm.
I'd rather lose the 9-0 that way.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to
Yeah.
lose it all, but I mean, I'm just saying that that's my perspective.
John chimes in here. He goes, I feel a lot of the U.S. men's national team players are there for a line on their resume rather than trying to be an international powerhouse. That, to your point, John, that plus kind of the money as we're talking about, herein lies the issue. And it's funny. I was looking back and I was reading. ESPN actually came out with a really good piece after their loss to Panama, and this was before they went out and lost to Canada. And I thought their description of the way the U.S. played in that game, and I think it's a look into exactly what the U.S. men's national team has looked like recently, and really since their switch over to becoming more, technically sound and getting under the school of Pochettino. I mean, they said, it was toothless. I mean, think about this. They had 811 touches, and here's the line right in front of me. That's the 11th time the Americans have had more than 800 touches in a game since September of 2017. I don't really understand the advanced statistics. It's XG, expected goals of 0.68. But making it the first time in that span the U.S. has had over 800 touches, but an expected goals of below 1. I mean, think about that. Over 800 touches, and they weren't even expected to make a goal. So that tells you just how not only conservative, but I think toothless is a good way of describing that, because they weren't getting forward. They can't figure out how to solve compact defenses the way that Panama was in that game. And yeah, they gave up some opportunities, and give or take a few inches. I mean, there's one that goes off the post. If it gets in the back of the net, maybe that's a different story, but that's concerning. And you're going to tell me that one of the biggest reasons why you brought Mauricio Pochettino on was because his playing style matched that of an American side, that attacking, that being forward, that being aggressive.
That's not
all those
why.
Things. That's
not why.
It's one of the reasons why they listed. That's what I'm saying.
They brought him on because it's sexy.
Well, right.
Because the fan today, and no offense to you fans, live in La La Land. Oh my God, look at this, Pochettino. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like if we could go hire Pele, we would. You know what I mean? Like it's because the name. It's right. Because what the name's all about. It has nothing to do with how good of a coach he is. We're not hiring coaches based on their ability to lead teams. We're hiring them based on how sexy it is. I keep saying this. We're not making logical, sound decisions. Look at it like this. The Detroit Lions would go after the sexy name when they were hiring coaches, right? The name associated with Bill Belichick, right? Dan Quinn and whatever name that guy's name was with the general manager. Was it Quinn? I think it was Quinn. Anyways, hired that guy. We hired Patricia. We hired Mariucci. We hired all these big time names that on like face value maybe meant something, but they did not have what we needed. They didn't have this energy about them that was going to bring players in and go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. And to be fair, I think the closest coach we had was before Patricia, or was it after Caldwell? Mm-hmm. I think Caldwell was the closest we had.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Caldwell was as close to Dan Campbell as we had. Now, I think players just liked his personality. He wasn't this biting kneecaps off kind of a guy, but
yeah,
he was getting the best out of players. I mean, so, but we went about it the wrong way. We went off their big names that meant nothing, and what do? We got Dan Campbell, and he's created this energy about it that you can't find anywhere. We're not looking for the best coaches. We're looking for the best names.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for these big time names that mean nothing.
Right.
If you're going to tell me that Pochettino is better than a licensed coach who's coaching maybe MLS Next in this country, I would argue that maybe he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is those coaches are currently developing.
They're in the weeds.
They're in the weeds.
Yeah.
I would argue that coach is way more prepared to coach the U.S. men's national team than Pochettino. You're just cultivating, So I actually think that taking the coach who's director of coaching for, Lou Fuse, or the Nationals, or I don't know, Scott Gallagher might be better suited to coach the U.S. men's national team.
Right. I always find it funny too. And just a brief aside, even in working in minor league ball, like you have players who turn into coaches who, if let's say, sometimes you'll see the Latin coaches working specifically with players who are from the Dominican Republic or Venezuela or Cuba or anywhere else, because again, not only do they understand the language, but they also understand the journey. They also understand what they went through to get there. I mean, our old manager in West Michigan, Brian Pena, who played in Detroit, I mean, he defected from Cuba. Like, he played for the Cuban national team. They were in Miami. It's fascinating story. Fascinating story. I know this is kind of distracting from what we're talking about, but it was a situation of, he knew someone, and there was a like a silent agreement, and after the game ended up defecting and ran away, and obviously made a career and a life for himself here in the United States. And he understands, though, the background, the language, what gets through to these guys, how to relate to these guys, which I think the language component is something that's I think gets lost in all of this. Like, if you were to, have someone come on this podcast with me who, maybe understood the English language, but wasn't from here, didn't know me at all, didn't know how, how I go, didn't how, my conversational, prowess or anything else like that, just didn't understand how to work with me. Even if he understood the language, it wouldn't necessarily be the same smooth moving product the way that it is when I'm working with you, because you understand everything is about not only me, but also where I'm from, what it is that I do, because we're both Michigan guys. Like, we both understand I'm only 2 hours separated from you, but there's a lot of things that are similarities that can be drawn between your story and my story because we're from the same state. And so that in and of itself is going to create an environment to where I'm going to be able to thrive much more. And that's why we see in minor league, these coaches who are from the same places are coaching these players that are from those places. Because again, language is a huge part of any sort of development, emotionally, physically, anything like that. If you're missing that, you're going to get lost. There's a lot that's going to get lost in translation. And that's why, when we always talk about it, there's a lot of great soccer being played here in the United States. I don't think we're getting the most out of it, not at the highest level, because we're not getting a guy who can relate to those players. And John dropped in something else here, and I don't know what you feel about this, but he goes, it's a shame that the U.S. soccer cannot adapt the training and development strategies of college powerhouses like Indiana, Akron, Michigan State, etc. I mean, that's a whole separate conversation too, John, though, because I know I've talked to JT a lot about this. Like, our top players are not playing in college. Like, that's the other hard part too. They're not really making up the college ranks. So, does the U.S. men's national, do they care about the college ranks? I don't know if they do.
Though. That's the problem, though, because I mean, again, herein lies the problem when you're talking about professionals.
Yeah.
Right. I actually think that if we want to be this powerhouse, and I don't know how this works into FIFA, but the U.S. men's national team is your full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that becomes like, you're okay. If I'm going to pay you $300,000 a year or $400,000 a year, you're working with your team for 10 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
But now that is completely opposite of the rest of the world. But the idea behind that is that now those players are all playing together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the continuity, the cohesiveness associated with that alone would make us a much better overall team.
Mm-hmm.
Then you throw in, the fact that, they're all there. They're all, they're all in the same environment. I mean, all those things would lend to a higher success rate on the international stage. Now, then the argument would be, well, they're not getting, the competition aspect of this. I'm fairly certain that you could still schedule a ton of games in that environment. You know what I mean? So it might be not the same level, but you'd be scheduling a ton of games, a lot of friendlies. But I also understand that part of this is making money, and that you need big time players like Christian Pulisic, the Landon Donovans, the Clint Dempseys, who are going to put people in the seats. We're going to buy jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to buy jerseys. You want them to buy the jersey, right? So, I mean, there's that side of this. I get that. It's just right now, what we're doing isn't working, and we're not anywhere near close to winning this thing. And yeah, we have. I mean, even Taylor Twellman yesterday was talking about how we have so many players who are playing in these, like really good teams across the pond. But we have more players now playing across the pond at a high level who are part of our team than we've ever had before.
Yeah.
But it's not translating to more wins.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. But we've come so far. We've come so far in developing players. We've come so far in putting players overseas. We've come generations and generations of finally getting to a point to where we're feeling like now, individually speaking, we have the players to go out and compete. And then we go out and lay an egg on the international level, what feels like every single time. So can someone please find a way to tell me why that is? Why is it that, and you look back at the history of the U.S. men's national team and going out and making it deep into the World Cup, which again has not happened very much, but we can even go to, when they were able to get just that close to just making a semifinal or you think we were one bad handball away from getting there in 2002. Some of the late 90s teams were really good. Even going back to the real early days when we first started competing. I mean, the American team that made it the farthest, they considered them a ragtag bunch of who's. That's the way that we've been able to win a lot of and not to say that that's what the 02 team was. They had a lot of great players. I mean, Landon Donovan was there. I'm trying to think of some of the other top footballers from that team, but that's the reality. And the truth was, because they were all really invested, maybe they were a little arrogant, maybe they were a little stupid, but there was this overwhelming sense of pride from just having that USA on your kit, on your jersey, on the front of your jersey. And that's something that Landon Donovan talked about, but that's not really something that you can coach. And we just live in a generation, and you mentioned it, JT. I mean, I don't want to go old man yelling at a cloud for episode 70 of the podcast, but if we have to go there, we can go there. But all these darn phones, but that's true. Like, we've become so specialized, but we've also become so insular, so individualistic that the focus is what's in it for me. We have such a what have you done for me lately mentality on the U.S. men's national team, and that's the most problematic side to me. I feel like in a lot of the other sports that we follow and that we watch, when it comes to Americans playing at the highest level, there's almost kind of like this expectation of, we are the best at this. So there should be a want and there should be a need for the best players to be like, yeah, of course I'll sign up. You know what I mean? But oh, France really thinks they figured it out, that they're the best basketball playing country in the world. They're not. Sorry. Sorry to show you this, but here's Steph Curry and here's LeBron James. Have fun. In hockey, we're starting to get there. Like, Canada still thinks that they run things, which they do. I'll give it to Canada, but we're right there. We're right on the doorstep, and we almost proved that the last time out. The World Baseball Classic. We don't. Did we necessarily send our best? No, because a lot of them are getting ready for the major league season because it runs right up to the major league season. So, but we still send the best of the rest because, again, we still have something to play for because Japan has caught up. Venezuela has caught up, the Dominican Republic. I mean, they're starting to really take over Major League Baseball in a lot of ways. And Japan continues to produce high-end talent. So we're going to actually care and invest a lot of time into that. I mean, you saw that game, the championship game between Japan and the U.S. the last time they played. I mean, that was, outside of Game 7 when the Cubs played in 2016. I mean, that was another moment where it was like baseball. I wouldn't say it stood alone, but it certainly drew more eyes than what the typical, usual game number 68 and in Arizona does. So that to me is the hardest part and it's something that doesn't really resonate with me. But now that I've begun to understand, what the player development system looks like, you start to understand it a little bit more, why these guys maybe aren't nearly as invested, because we've developed individuals. We haven't necessarily done a good job at the highest level of developing a team. That's what we're missing. Individuals, we've done great. We can't get everyone to come together and buy into this idea of being a powerhouse. And even if it is friendlies, if you have an opportunity to go out and beat someone in an American, why not? Why not? Why not? I don't know. So it's the way I look at it.
I think we could beat ourselves with a held stick until the sun goes down, right? And it's going to be the same thing. As we talked about this with Dean Linke, mark our words here that in the next in the World Cup, don't be surprised if we don't get out of the group play, right? Group stage. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. It wouldn't surprise me if we lost every game. Not one bit would it surprise me.
We are dealing with injuries and stuff too. I mean, Dest is hurt, Pepe's hurt, but I don't know if you can really chalk it up to that. To be completely honest with you, I think that's just an aside.
Yeah. Again, the idea we had an American led coach, right? We had it, we had it here with our past head coach, right? And Greg Berhalter and domestic coach. And I think at times our team looked really good. I think at times we didn't. I think the whole Reyna thing really just put a bad, cancer over the whole thing. And those things, unfortunately, will not, they don't go away, right? Because Reyna was going to keep coming. He's a player that, and again, his father, longtime U.S. men's national team player, right, and had a lot of success, and Claudio did, and there's a lot of politics that go into all this, and you can argue about all the nuances to how that went down. But Greg Berhalter, if that did not happen, I think would still be the coach today. If that whole thing didn't go down, I don't think we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So if I look at Bruce Arena, for example, Bruce Arena, another coach, right, that had a lot of success with the U.S. men's national team. American domestic coach, right, who understood the player, understood what we were trying to accomplish. And I wish Pochettino much success. I really do. I just, first off, it's never been done before, and obviously never been done before. And eventually there will be a time where a non-domestic coach will win a World Cup with their team. I don't think it'll be a U.S. World Cup that'll happen in. To be fair, it could be Canada. Jesse March. The guy's got a big chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
So
if you can't get past Canada, then, I think we kind of understand how this story goes. And that's, to be honest with you, JT, that's the scariest part in my mind. We can't get through Mexico recently. We can't get through Canada recently. If we can't even get through our neighbors, how the hell do you expect us to go into the World Cup and handle any sort of international side? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't think it's, we talk about fire and going out and playing aggressive and forward and attacking. The coaches always say, and I'm sure you probably said this once or twice too, JT, being a coach, once upon a time, and it's one of the most overused sayings ever, but like a lot of good sayings, it is overused, but it still has credibility and validity. The whole practice how you play. Like the greatest players in the world, that they go out and they practice almost like it's a game 7 every single time they go out there. Like
we're talking about practice.
Not Allen Iverson, but everybody else. But that's the side that really kind of separates the great from the good. And in my mind, when you talk about Nations League and you talk about friendlies, you talk about Gold Cup, you talk about all this other stuff, that all in my mind is practice. That all in my mind is practice. And it's practice leading up to the biggest tournament in the world, which is the World Cup. And you might not think that you have a realistic chance of going out and winning that. But if we don't see that fire and all that other stuff that we want to see in those matchups, that's an indication of a direct indication of how you're going to play when the biggest tournament comes around. Like that, don't tell me, well, we're just ramping up. We still have to figure out our combos or who we want. No, it has to look good now. You have to have a sense of urgency now. You can't have a sense of urgency a couple of months from now. You can't have a sense of urgency a year from now. Okay, getting ready for the World Cup is not like getting ready for a final exam. Okay, you don't study for 24 hours the night before and then go out and beat someone. Like, now is when you should have a lot of that stuff figured out. And you should have these guys moving in the right direction, and that they should care about going out and playing in the Nations League and winning the Gold Cup and all these other things. They should, because on a minor level, it shows not only progression in American soccer, but if you can't dominate the teams in those competitions, you stand no chance of going anywhere in the World Cup, and you will make an embarrassment of yourself on home soil. And that's what brings this tournament to the next level, JT. It's not just that we're playing in the World Cup. It's here. It's on home soil. And so you're going to have more fans than I guess what you would normally have if you were playing across the pond or anywhere else. And so, are you ready for that? As evidenced by what we saw in the Nations League, as evidenced by what we saw the last time they played Mexico? No, it doesn't seem like it. It does not seem like it, at least to me.
No, it does not. And I like I said, I'm a huge fan of the U.S. men's national team and U.S. soccer in general. I'm a huge fan of watching their games when they are on. And that will never change, just because I obviously I love the game of soccer. Um, but again, this idea that if we're looking for the best coach, I would argue we're looking just like in the environment when you talk with college coaches. A lot of times, college coaches will tell you they're not looking for the best player; they're looking for the right player, right? And there's a big difference between those two things, because the right player comes with talent, but they come with the things that are not measurable. That you can't measure certain things, the intangibles, right? How quick you are is a measurable thing. How fast you are, how well you play the ball, how you play under pressure, your understanding of the game. Like, all those things are tangible things that you can equate to saying someone is the best. But then you talk about the right player. Well, that player who's willing to be versatile, who's willing to play in multiple positions, understanding the goal of the team. A player that comes in knowing that they're going to have to work their ass off to get to where they want to go, right? A player that knows, that it might not happen right away, right? A player that, hey, even when they're not feeling right, will go out there and give it their all, right? Those are intangibles. A coach coming to you and saying, hey, I know you're a left back in the recruitment process, but would you be willing to play center back, midfield, right? Or going to that player and saying, hey, I know you're a left back, but we're going to only use you as a left forward.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay with that? A player that says, I'm not comfortable with that, well, they're not going to get picked.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing to be said about the best player and then the right player.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true about a coach. If you're going to sit here and tell me that the Detroit Lions picked the best available coach in Dan Campbell when they hired him, they did not.
No.
They picked the right coach.
Right.
The best available coach was not Dan Campbell. He was the right coach.
Who matches our identity.
Pochettino. Was he the best available coach? Probably. Was he the right coach? Not at all.
Nope.
And there's a significant difference between those two. Right? So the right coach was Jesse March. Right? That was the right coach. Right? And maybe but a Jesse March like coach. That was the right coach. Not the best, but the right.
Right.
But oftentimes we have to fail a bunch before we get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that sucks is that we failed right before this thing was going to be on home soil. And that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest fundamental flaw in this whole thing, is you picked a coach who wasn't going to do what you wanted him to do in the time period needed in order to pull this thing together.
Yeah. And that's to everyone out there watching, listening right now, okay? JT and I are cheering just as hard as you guys for the U.S. men's national team to go out and win some significant games and put the U.S. on the map. We're cheering for the U.S. to go out and try and get to the World Cup final, maybe win one by some sort of miracle, okay? We're all cheering for that. All of us are cheering for that. We're just a little concerned as to what we've seen out of this team so far and what we've seen from Mauricio Pochettino. Because, again, we were promised with this hire that this was going to be the one to really send the U.S. over the top. And everybody was romantic about it, and everybody was freaking out about it. And you even look at all the articles after he was hired. Everybody was like, yeah, he's 100% the right guy for the job. Really? We haven't seen that. We have not seen that through the results. We've not seen that through the way that he played in those two games. And, again, judged on the way that they were able to handle possession in those two games, you should be able to do something with that. That's like having all the best cards in your hand and you fold. That's what the U.S. looked like in the Nations League final. And so it's not that we're not cheering for him. It's not that we don't want him to do good, but I think it's perfectly natural for us to start raising concerns about what we see if that's the product we're becoming accustomed to, because that's where we are right now. How does it change before the World Cup? I don't know. We'll see in the Gold Cup, I guess.
I did want to end our show here today with something that my daughter. If anyone remembers the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge from many years ago, now there's this new one that's come about, and one of her friends selected her for the USCS. Like, I don't know the exact. Maybe you know it. There's a new name for it, but it's about mental health and speaking up. I think it's called US Speak Up, something like that. But anyways, we did this. I'm just gonna put it on the screen. So this is. She asked me to be the one to do this for her. So take a look.
It just come out of nowhere. Yeah, that'll do it. That's so funny.
That was I had to do it, man. She didn't even finish. I didn't let her finish what she was saying. I just did it right away. I was like, screw this.
I did one for my grandma once upon a time because she had ALS. So yeah, it was fun. I remember those days. It's fun that it's coming back though. I like these. Feels like it's 2014 again, man. I just saw a guy get ice water dumped on him via a crane yesterday. That was pretty crazy. But yeah, people are getting creative with it. But I guess we're turning the clock back a decade. I can't believe it's been that long because it didn't feel that long ago. But yep, 2014. So that's awesome. Good for her.
But that is a wrap here on episode 70. I'm going to try and rest my voice the rest of the day.
Yeah, there you go. May as well.
It really sounds crappy right now. So I do apologize for that. But if you're first time stopping by, thank you. Subscribe, like us, share this with your friends and family. Come back here tomorrow. We'll be back at it again, 9 a.m. Same time, same place. And I will have an announcement about where you can watch us starting here next week. We'll be making some changes to where you can access us, and we'll announce that as well. But we will not be available on Twitter and Facebook starting next week. So going to have to watch us only on YouTube and Roku. But either way. But that'll wrap it up here for us here on Inside the Game. You've been watching the National Soccer Network. Be back here same time, same place tomorrow morning. This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.